All right, and I think we are all here. Welcome everyone to the Elevate Organization Panel, the second one. This is day one. This organization panel is for nonprofit organizations with budget sizes between $43,000 to $134,000. My name is Jesus Pantel. I am the Cultural Funding Supervisor here in the Cultural Arts Division. I'll be facilitating the Elevate Review Panel today. We also have Maya Williams-Britton running the slides and the background tech for us. Rachel Osgood from the Long Center is also providing technical support. And Jen Margulies is our outside facilitator, making sure that both staff and the panelists keep equity centered in mind with our new pilot projects here for Elevate. So again, this is the organization panel 2 for mid-sized nonprofit organizations with budgets between $43,000 to $134,000. The panelists have reviewed all applications prior to today, and they have tentatively scored and made comments on them. They may change their scores during the session today, depending on feedback from the other panelists, but they are not required to change their scores. And they will finalize their scores as we are moving from application to finishing up one application, moving to the next. We will have a maximum of 10 minutes for each application. I will be recording or timing those. If we have any kind of tech issues, I will make sure that we stop the timer or pause the timer so that way everybody gets the full time allotment for their application. If there's any tech issues, for the panelists, we have asked them not to repeat any comments that have already been said by previous panelists. We also are not scoring on consensus. So one panelist may have more high praise sounding remarks and others may have more critical remarks. That's fine. We are not scoring on consensus. We are also asking the panelists not to announce their numeric score, but instead to provide overall application comments. And those comments should be in alignment with the review criteria. And we have asked them to not base their scores on any information that does not align with the rubric. So everything that they're scoring should be aligned with the rubric. We've asked them to look beyond grantsmanship to the extent possible. So they may make comments that they had to hunt for the information, but if they were able to find it, then that should, they should score accordingly that they were able to find it, even if it was in a different area or different section. They may have gone to your website to find that information as well. They were not required to do so unless you listed your website in your work sample. And they can also use firsthand experience. So if they are familiar with your work, they've been to one of your events or activities before, they can take that into account, but not secondhand experience. So, only if they personally have experienced your work. We will have one conflict of interest today. We will announce that at the time the applicant, the panelist score will not count against the applicant. They just did not score that application. So when we were averaging your final scores together, we will not utilize the applicant, the panelist with a conflict of interest at all. When they are recusing themselves on that specific application, we will ask them to turn their cameras off and mute themselves while it's being discussed, and then we will invite them back. So with that being said, we are ready to begin. The first application up for review is Rancho Alegre. Alca and Zell are our primary and secondary. And the 10-minute timer will begin once Alca starts giving her comments.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I really enjoyed this application. I'll just briefly read what their mission is, which is to preserve and promote conjunto music and accordion-driven roots music genre born in South Texas. They put in this application for a music festival which they want to organize, and they're requesting funding for a monthly series, to kind of involve the community in. I thought I really appreciated that they included their website link in the proposal. It really helped me understand, the breadth of the work that they do, and the background, more than what is in the application. I thought they specifically serve a cultural group, which is a very important part of this particular grant funding. So that was good. I thought that their history of service is pretty strong. I found their cultural leadership rooted in the community that they serve. So that's always wonderful for cultural arts organizations for this particular application again. They overall, I think I scored them high. I probably felt they could even the accessibility piece, I thought, considering that their executive founder is visually impaired themselves, they did put in extra effort to make sure that their events were more accessible beyond the ADA compliance, which is there for their event spaces. Let me see. In terms of my scoring, I felt maybe there was a bit of room to grow where it is opportunity creation and as well as where they're in their responsiveness piece. But overall, a strong application, and that's it from me.
I don't have anything to go against anything she said. I agree with everything that was put from the first, so I'm good.
Anybody else? Other panelists? Your thoughts on this application?
If there are no additional comments, and again, a reminder, we're asking the panelists not to repeat comments that have already been said. So if there are any new comments, additional comments, seeing as there are none, if you would please finalize your score. And we will move on to the next application. Next application up for review is Arcos. Alka and Chloe are our primary and secondary. Again, the timer will not start until the primary starts giving their comments. And since this is going back to back, then we need a couple of seconds to.
Yes, please. I was going to say, give me a minute. I'll be jumping. Thank you.
Yes. So again, a reminder, we will not start the recording until the timer until the panelist, the primary starts giving their comments. And while we're waiting for those in attendance, if we do get down to the 10-minute mark, or close to the 10-minute mark, I will be giving a 3-minute warning reminder, 2-minute warning reminder, 1-minute warning reminder, 30-second reminder, and then counting down from 10 seconds. And then we will stop reviewing that application if we get, to that point.
All right, I am ready. So this next application is ARCOS, and they're a multidisciplinary artistic training and development programming. They're doing multidisciplinary artistic training and development, and they have weekly classes and community building gatherings. They're doing some very interesting work. I did appreciate that the website link was included over there. It gave me an opportunity to see the kind of space that they operate in, and they have a strong mission statement, but it does not specifically serve a particular cultural community. It serves a broader artistic community. They're doing amazing work, but it seems like the performing community is being served isn't at a risk of cultural erasure, as is one of the requirements for this particular grant. The artists might be from a marginalized community, but that's not really their specific core mission or purpose. The organization has evolved to serve the key constituents. They have strong cultural leadership in the artistic community. That there is definite relevance and responsiveness. I scored them very highly in the opportunity creation and community benefit section, because they are providing a lot of very valuable services to the artists in terms of the grants and the mentoring and their budget was very clear. What else do I have? There was one comment I have that from the application, at one point from the history of work, I wish there was a little more clarity there in terms of a chronological, setup, and did this work over time. So I would have really appreciated that. It kind of gives you an idea of the trajectory and how they've grown. And also wasn't clear if they had a specific space that they operate out of, or is it that their programming is happening in different places. So for their residency, which they say they offer, is it at a specific place, or is it at different locations, and so just that was a little unclear to me. But overall, yeah, those are my comments.
Thank you. Secondary, Chloe?
I agree, pretty much very similar things. I think it's really interesting to see what you're doing with reparations. That's kind of cool. I think it would be pretty good to include a few more community relationships outside of your organization. Just something that I noticed, but other than that, those are my comments.
Thank you both. Anybody else, other panelists on this one?
I felt that in terms of intersexuality, it's listed, but it's not. It was very hard to ice out or dig out in the application exactly how it's happening, because they didn't provide a key constituency based off the grant, what the grant is asking for. So it was very difficult to give them the points on intersexuality, because they didn't show a group that they're working with. So that made it a little hard for me to understand what was happening.
Thank you, Zoe. Anyone else? Okay. I'm not seeing other hands. I did want to clarify that serving and being accountable to community groups that are at immediate risk of cultural erasure and displacement in Austin, and or that have been institutionally marginalized and underfunded by the City of Austin Cultural Arts Division, is a priority for this funding. It's not a requirement. but it is a priority. And because it's a priority, that does mean that if an application doesn't demonstrate that focus and the various questions that provide an opportunity to do so, the scoring is likely to reflect that, which is what we're hearing, but I did want to clarify that it's not technically a requirement.
Thank you for that reminder, Jen. Any other comments from the panel? If there are none, if you would please finalize your scores. And we will move on to the next application. All Rhythms, Chloe and Sue are our primary and secondary. And Chloe, whenever you're ready to begin.
So I really like how All Rhythms is working with students and providing programming that focuses on Afro-Caribbean and Hispanic Latino musical traditions. I think it's cool that you're exposing the Afro-Cuban and Afro-Caribbean music. It's great to see that you are allowing your teaching artists to add their voice to the building of your sound. That's great. It's cool to see that you mentor them as well. I think some places that could use some improvement are your programmatic reach section. Your work samples and info on how this will support the cultural arts community was great, but you didn't really go into a super clear marketing plan. In your cultural activity section, it would have been nice to hear a little bit more about equity with a few more examples. You talk about doing private one-on-one lessons for those who can't really afford them, but I would have been cooler to see more examples on how exactly you're implementing more equity. But those are my comments. Overall, pretty great and strong proposal.
Thank you. Secondary, Sue?
Oh, I thought the mission was really pretty exciting, and the fact that they've been working in this sector for so long, talking about serving underserved communities with music and arts programming and focusing on Hispanic and African American communities, which is right in line with the Elevate guidelines. I really appreciated the goals that they have set and how clear they were about explaining them in their history. I did appreciate the board makeup, the fact that they're working hard to have this work be about the community and for the community and by the community, which was excellent to see. And it does feel like they fit very well within the Elevate guidelines. So those are my comments.
Thanks, Chloe and Sue. Other panelists?
This was a little bit confusing for me because they identify key constituencies, but then they flirt back with the word everyone. So as reading it, it was very hard to figure out if they're really focusing on key constituencies or if they're trying to get to the greater music listening audience. And they didn't really mention, they work with youth, but they didn't mention schools, particular schools that they're working in. So I would suggest they do that going forward.
Thank you, Zoe. Other folks?
I just have two notes here. One is I like the detailing of their budget. And I thought while I agree that their board is really strong, and it's from within the community, I don't know why I have a comment which says they didn't clarify the roles of the various board members, which was requested in the cultural leadership piece. But other than that, I thought it was a really strong application.
Thank you, Alka. Anything else to add?
Seeing as there are no additional comments, if you would please finalize your scores. And we will move on to the next application, American Artists Project. Onyx and Sue are our primary and secondary. And Onyx, whenever you're ready to begin.
Thank you. Okay, so for American Artists Project, they are trying to expand their programming for underrepresented and underserved artists in Austin through performances, concerts, and well, I don't have much time to list all of them, but one of them that caught my attention that I really enjoyed in the application was the mention of Variations, which is a project, a concert that they're planning for December that features artists with visible and invisible disabilities and neurodivergences. I hope I'm saying that word right. Overall, I thought that this was a strong application, and things that stood out to me: diverse board, concise mission, the way in which they think about different pricing, accessibility within pricing as well, different ranges in terms of like ticket pricing, for example. They also have a variety of programming to cater to each underrepresented community. I'm just reading through my notes. Including Latino communities as well. When it comes to their leadership makeup, I noted that the board is made of over 50% people of color, different genders, as well as members from the LGBTQ community. They also were mentioning in their application that, sorry, I'm just reading my notes really quick. Okay, so in addition to the things that I mentioned, they also mentioned that they, as part of their programming, they hire artistic advisors, board members, and program directors from the communities they serve. Although I felt the application could have benefited a little bit more to be a little bit more specific, what communities in particular, what projects, you know, who has worked with who, what maybe like artistic advisors have worked with what communities, and then the board members, what communities do they work with. I did want to note that I think the application could also benefit from more specificity when it comes to intersectionality. It seems like the programming is very intersectional, or has potential to highlight how intersectionality plays into the ideation for each concert. For example, Variation to Singing Joy at the end of the year, and so on. So I felt like that could have helped the application a lot more to make it even more strong. They have great community relationships, and one of the things that I liked also about the application is how they refer to the community as their biggest cheerleaders. I thought that was very nice inclusion. And one thing also that I thought could make the application stronger is when they talk about hiring program leads and people that help them with the programming. One thing that I noted was they mentioned how we hire program leads that represent but are not directly from some of the targeted communities. And I felt that was a little confusing. So maybe just a little bit more clarification with what they meant exactly with that. And I felt also that their budget was clear. They provided a breakdown for any surplus when it comes to their fiscal year, and they described where they are in a strong momentum, where their programming is expanding, their funding is also, they've been getting more donations recently, so they really want to tap into this energy and momentum for growth to expand their programming into 2024 and beyond. I also noted that this is a relatively new organization. It started in 2019. I want to make sure I'm not missing anything. Those are all my main highlights for this. Overall, I thought it was a good application. Thanks.
Thank you, Onyx. Secondary, Sue?
I agree with quite a bit of what Onyx had to say. I would say that I felt like maybe in the community relationship section, there was an opportunity for more network building and more collaboration. And I noted that, you know, under the opportunity creation and community, that they might have mentioned more about, you know, job creation, training and investment in students and artists, which is something that they had kind of pointed to earlier, but it would have been great to see more description there. I noted that the project is highly intersectional in my view. And the applicant mentioned the diversity of the board of directors, but there was no mention of staff or executive leadership. Perhaps they're so new that they don't have that kind of staff yet, but I wanted to just note that that was not mentioned. Yeah, those are my comments.
Great. Thanks, Alex and Sue. Other comments, additions from other panelists?
I only have one, which is I felt a detailed marketing plan was missing.
Thank you. Other comments?
While others are thinking if they have other comments, just a reminder, couple of points on intersectionality. Again, panelists are not scoring on consensus, so there can be, different opinions on things. That is fine. And then the other thing is to look beyond grantsmanship to the extent possible. We do ask the panelists, if something was hard to find, to comment on that, but if they were able to find it in other places, then to take that into consideration when they are scoring their applications. We have just over 3 minutes left. Any additional comments from the panel? Seeing as there are no additional comments, if you would please finalize your scores. And we will move on to the next application, the Tiny Minotaur. I don't know how you pronounce that. You read it in your head and, how do you pronounce it out loud? The Tiny Minotaur, Chloe and Alka are our primary and secondary. And Chloe, whenever you're ready to begin.
The Tiny Minotaur is a physical community art space and organization that facilitates original fantasy role-playing games, installations, and visual arts environments. I actually really love what the Tiny Minotaur is trying to do to decolonize the imagination. Fantasy and sci-fi media historically live out people of color. Dana brings her experience as a Black queer woman with a ton of additional lived experience like blacksmithing that can be applied to her creative toolbox. Her time in Japan and the Netherlands create an interesting mix of creativity that is wonderfully applied to what she's trying to accomplish. They're not only providing a safe space, but they're ensuring the safety of the marginalized communities that they serve. Some things I had to take some points off for were your accessibility accommodations for the disabled community. They don't really go beyond federally mandated accessibility requirements. It would be great to see what you're doing for those in the autistic and neurodivergent community who may experience things like sensory overload. Fantasy and sci-fi are pretty popular special interests for those in the ADHD autism spectrum. Things can get pretty emotionally intense when approaching a space that caters to a special interest. So it'd be really cool to provide a grounding space that's cozy, safe, secure, and located from commotion, away from commotion. And it's just a small suggestion. And you also don't have a super clear marketing plan. You include ways that you want to develop your audience and how it will amplify the cultural arts sector. But you mostly need to include how you're planning to reach new audiences within the community you're serving. I love the classes, workshops, free book exchanges you're planning, but I'm mostly talking about like advertisements, social media. Lastly, one small thing is you could have gone into a little bit more detail from your debt from 2022 in your budget. But overall, I found this proposal to be super creative. It brings back a little bit of the DIY scene and weirdness that Austin has been missing for a long time. It would just be really cool to see this proposal succeed and fit into the Austin cultural arts sector.
Thank you, Chloe. Secondary, Alka.
I agree with everything Chloe just said. I also really enjoyed getting to know this proposal. I think they're in a very unique, interesting space. I absolutely also thought, like Chloe said, about how this is what made Austin what it was, and this is what we're really missing. Maybe we need to support more of this. Having said that, I was not clear from the application if the funding is for the general programming through the year, or is it for the space? I wasn't very clear about that. And if it is for the general programming, what exactly does it look like? They talk in a lot of general language about all that they're hoping to achieve and wanting to achieve and do. But I wish there were specifics about like how many events are being planned. What is that programming actually looking like? What kind of events and or is it just one extended event? Maybe, you know, but so I wasn't very clear about that. I love that the organization is growing and the applicant is, which means that they have the community support over the years. They've built that. They're being able to move from a small space in which they seem to have accomplished a lot to a bigger venue, and they have a bigger vision. But I think to support that, a strong marketing outreach plan is needed, and which was something I didn't find in the application. But yeah, those are my comments.
Thanks, Chloe and Alka. Other participants, thoughts that you had, panelists? And again, I do want to remind folks, we did ask the panelists not to repeat comments that have been said. Everyone has read every application and scored it. But in the interest of time, we asked folks not to repeat comments that they agree with.
Yes, thank you for that reminder, Jen. I will just say real quick, Alka's comment about something, you know, being more clear about what, you know, was this a series of activities or not? In the project summary, it does say that Tiny Minotaur serves as a living ecosystem for artists and performers looking to expand their creative abilities and supports them through equitable pay for their labor and craft. Oh no, it was a sentence before that. Tiny Minotaur employs over 10 actors, 20 fabricators and craftsmen, and dozens of one-off commissions. I think the comment still stands, you know, make that clearer for possible for the panelists, but just wanted to remind them that that was in the work summary.
Thank you.
Yes. Any further comments from the panel? Again, additional, you know, new comments that have not been stated already? Seeing as there are none, if you would please finalize your scores. And we will move on to the next application, Black Makers Market. Zell and Chloe are our primary and secondary. And Zell, whenever you're ready to begin.
Absolutely. The Black Markers Makers, they are they want to do a Black Outside Festival that is a day-long event that celebrates Black culture, entrepreneurship, creativity. The festival features live music, art, food, and commerce, and aims to strengthen the visibility of economic stability of Black-owned businesses. I love that they had a website link. I absolutely love this application. The cultural, the activities I thought were awesome. The mission and who they're aiming at for their key constituents was very clear. History was amazing. Everything. I just really enjoyed this application. What they slid in a little bit where I got just a little bit confused was they slid in the monthly events they have, and they didn't really give as much detail on those monthly events as they do for this day festival. But overall, I thought it was a great, strong application.
Thank you. Secondary, Chloe?
Yeah, I agree. It was a really awesome application. I love seeing what they're doing. Very, very straightforward too. I didn't really have to search for any of the information. It was all there. I think the only things that I took off for were accessibility accommodations. Since your festival is going to be outside, it'd be cool to see a little bit more outside of ADA standards. It would have been cool to see if you're specifying if that terrain is accessible for wheelchairs. And if like the booths accommodate for this as well. Sometimes, you know, booths are on like risers and for their tables, so it might not be at like eye level for people who are on wheelchairs. And then your marketing plan wasn't super clear. And it would have been nice to hear more about your debt mentioned in your budget. And you also don't mention the language accommodations that were included in the proposal and in the budget. So just that's all I have, but overall really, really strong.
As panelists, other comments in addition to what Zell and Chloe have shared?
I really also enjoyed this application, and I just wanted to note, in addition to everything that's been said, that I appreciated in the accessibility framework, I guess. They mentioned a few times that they're currently doing a web accessibility audit and accessibility remediation, because that's one of the main portals where people go to check out information about the market. So I just appreciated that thoughtfulness to their accessibility plan.
Thank you, Onyx. Any additional comments from other panelists?
Seeing as there are no other comments, if you would please finalize your scores, and we will move on to our next application. Hot Rhythm Foundation. Zell and Alka are our primary and secondary. And Zell, whenever you are ready to begin. Oh, you're muted, Zell.
Give me 1 second.
Sure. And again, a reminder for those in attendance or watching the recording later, we have a maximum of 10 minutes per application, but we are asking panelists not to repeat comments that have already been made. And the 10-minute timer will not start until the primary starts giving their comments.
Okay. The Hot Rhythm Holiday, presented by Hot Rhythm Foundation, is a 3-day jazz festival and dance workshop weekend held annually in Austin, Texas. Hot Rhythm Holiday 2024 will be held February 16th through the 18th, 2024 at the Mansion, Texas Federation of Women's Club. Music performed by Hot Rhythm Holiday is swing and jazz music, small combo, big band, and Manucci, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, style jazz. Austin-based performers include, but may not be limited to, Rick Party, Colin Hancock, Hot Rhythm Makers, the Charlie Christians, on and on and on and on. I did not find this application to be very strong. I felt that they were focusing on the music that has been created by a group that is about to be erased. It is caught with the risk of being erased from Austin, but going through their information, there's no key constituencies in their leadership or other areas that support what they're trying to do in terms of those key constituencies that they want to focus on. And so I did not feel that this application was a great application for this particular funding cycle.
Thank you. Secondary, Alka?
Yeah, I don't have much more to add. I kind of give this application a mid score, mostly because, again, the constituents that they serve are not at a risk of cultural displacement. And then from there, that kind of informed my scoring of the rest of the application. So pretty much what Zell said. Yeah.
Thank you, Zell and Alka. Other panelists, any additional thoughts on this application?
Seeing as there are no other comments, if you would please finalize your scores. And the next application up for review is Groundwork Music Project. Sue and Chloe are our primary and secondary. And Sue, whenever you're ready to begin. Sure. And again, we will not start the timer until the primary begins giving their comments.
So Groundwork Music Project is our next organization, and they help children learn to play instruments, particularly the ukulele, and read music and express themselves, ending in a performance with professional musicians. They work to compensate for music education deficits in school settings. And they seek helping kids become both musical successes and also have greater success for their academic work. So in their mission, the applicant talks about their key constituencies being families of color in schools and neighborhoods with limited means in East and Central and South Austin. But I wish that per the elevation or the Elevate guidelines, they had been a little clearer about who exactly they're talking about as their key constituents. Ideally, they would have been clear, but I also noted that they mentioned specific schools that they were working with, and I took a minute to look at the 2022 census to see the demographics of these schools, and they are primarily communities that are at risk of displacement and cultural erasure. So I scored them, accordingly. In addition, their history of work does talk about them working within this paradigm from the jump from when they first started their work. So that was a positive. They did have some letters in their documentation that helped support what they were talking about as far as their mission and their goals and how they managed to do their work. I also felt like they did a pretty good job with accessibility, and they did mention that they have other languages that they offer and that they will be adding Spanish with the Elevate grant funding. So that was positive. I wish they had given a little bit more information about their marketing plan. They mentioned a little bit about it in their budget, but it would have been better for them to have explained a little bit further how their marketing plan will help create new audiences and help them connect better to the audiences that they currently have. As far as their board members and their cultural leadership, they did reference some leadership that had a deeply rooted cultural understanding or lived experience within key constituency groups, but it was not super clear, and I would have appreciated a little bit more information or data along those lines so that we could understand better how they work. Yeah, those are my comments.
Thank you. Secondary, Chloe?
Yeah, I thought this program was really good for students that are at an immediate risk of cultural erasure. Music programs in elementary schools are often overlooked and aren't really addressed until middle or high school, which kind of gets those who didn't have access to those programs behind when they do want to get into music. So I thought that was really awesome. But I think when it comes to your community voice section, you mentioned that the principals in the schools that you're working with can speak on have their voices be elevated, but don't super go into how or how they're doing so. You provide when do you provide opportunities for input by the community? It would be cool to see how more of the principals were involved in the creative development of the project. I just needed like a little more specifics. I think it was like included in one of the letters, but I think a little bit more detail would have been nice. And then it would be really interesting to see if any of your staff is trauma informed or trained to work with kids that are going through tough life situations, because sometimes kids from Title I schools, in my experience, are going through a lot of stuff. So just kind of being ready for that and having that in your tool belt is really good for working with kids that are having a hard time. And same with like neurodivergent kids and stuff like that. So that's all I got.
Thank you so much, Sue and Chloe. Other panelists, did you have additional comments on this application?
Looking to see if there's additional comments. Onyx, you just came back on screen, so I don't know if you had another additional comment. No? Okay. And a reminder to the panelists and the applicants that, we do ask the panelists to give constructive criticism and feedback for future improvement that are directly related to the scoring criteria. So just for some of those suggestions, things that would have made, possibly the application a bit stronger, but also just, general things related to additional or to review criteria that could make applications stronger. If there are no further comments from the panel, if you would please finalize your scores. We will move on to Rude Mechanicals, and then we will take a break. But let's go ahead and review Rude Mechanicals. Zell and Sue are our primary and secondary. And the full name as it's listed in there is Rude Mechanicals, a theater collective, aka Rude Mex. Just so you can make sure that you're pulling up the correct one in Portal, and Zell whenever you are ready to begin.
Rude Mex is respectfully requesting support to produce and or present a full season of new work by a diverse range of artists from their disciplines. These activities will all be available to tourists and general public and include 4 original main stage works, 1 series of community workshops, 2 presentations of touring artists, 1 sponsored project called Free Space, etc., and Rude Fusion, multiple artist residencies in our space, and 5 artist residencies at the Planet at Kyle. Wanted to go to. They've since their inception, they've always have done theater with diverse groups, from working at the Off Center and doing the Black Arts Movement Festival, Throw Like a Girl, and just many other amazing things that they've done. These projects that they're are wanting to fund, they want to work with a playwright who fits the constituencies and who's been a part of their group of artists. Her name is Crystal Bird. They want to do a really interesting thing where it's called The River, a portrait from America from a rowboat in July, which is sounds funny, but it's awesome. And so I just thought that their overall diversity just hit every number, and I know their history of work, and so I thought it was a really strong application.
Thank you, Zell. Secondary, Sue?
I agree with Zell. Felt this was a really strong application. I was really pleased. I did want to just note that the response was really wonderful underneath the cultural leadership. It was helpful information, but it did not give the full picture. I wish that the applicant had submitted some aggregated data describing the totality of the board leadership, their lived experience within key constituencies. I felt like that would have been a little bit more helpful. In general, the intersectionality was spot on. The accessibility was a little bit of an issue. I thought it would have been great to have some more information about what offerings that they have for people with ability differences, perhaps hearing, vision, mobility. More specificity in that area would have been also appreciated. Overall, though, very strong application. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Zell and Sue. Other comments from other panelists?
Well, we're waiting to see if other panelists have any additional comments. I'm not sure if this is exactly what Sue was referring to with the board lived experience, but just so both the applicants and the panelists are aware, the applicants did provide board demographic information, which is only seen on the Economic Development Department side. So it's not seen on the panelist side. So don't want to speak for the applicant, but that could be a reason why they figured they had already provided that information, and that you would see it. It is a non-scoring part of the application since, we cannot score on immutable characteristics. But just, if that affects the panelist scores, I just want you all as a panel to be aware of that. With that being said, Alka, I see you came off of mute. Did you have a comment?
Yeah, I had got something about the budget and I was trying to dig out to say, why did I say that? And I think I just have a comment which says the more budget details would have been appreciated. So I think in the actual budget form that they've submitted, there's a lot of writing which says, but there is no breakdown. So I guess when I say a administrative fee or artistic fee, it would have been good to see how many artists or people are being covered. So that kind of detailing would have been nice to see. But beyond that, I agree with everything else that the panelists said.
Thank you. Anybody else?
If there are no further comments from the panel, if you would please finalize your scores. And then we will take a break, and we will pause the recording while we are on break. Back, and we are back from break. Our next application up for review. Let me find my timer. There it is. Next application up for review is Girls Rock Austin. Alka and Sue are our primary and secondary. And Alka, whenever you're ready to begin.
Hi, yeah. So this is Girls Rock Austin. Their mission is to foster confidence, creativity, and leadership skills through music education, mentorship, self-care programs since 2007. I appreciated that they had included their website. I am familiar with the organization and I think they do great work. Their website gave more information. They're specifically working with women, young girls, trans and gender non-conforming individuals. So I feel like their community or their constituents are clearly defined. They do have multiple programs for this community that they serve. So it's not just music, it's, it goes beyond music. They do engage and mentor young people. I read, I think it was in the history of service that they, during the pandemic, when a lot of organizations kind of closed down operations, they actually pivoted and were able to take on programming to keep their constituents engaged, but move into the field of service. So I think that their cultural leadership is also diverse in terms of having people with lived experiences as not just musicians, but women from the LGBTQ community, as well as people who are more aware of mental health, which is another issue that they talk about in the application that they are equipped to deal with. Children of all learning abilities or young people of all learning abilities. I did take off some points for them. I also like their opportunity creation. They wrote about how their interns, how their students can become interns, going through their program. I have a few points of maybe for their programmatic reach, which again doesn't really include any kind of detailed marketing plan, just like a very general overview. And because their budget form did not have the budget details included in it. But other than that, I thought this was a really strong application. I I gave it a a very high score, and I think they're doing great work.
Thank you, Alka. Secondary, Sue?
I absolutely agree with Alka. I think that this group is doing a great job within the work that they've defined for themselves, and I really appreciated their explanation of their mission and their key constituency being all inclusive of trans and gender nonconforming youth within their mission of empowering youth. It was wonderful to see that. I really appreciated their trajectory as an organization. They were very clear about starting out and then moving into more equitable work as they progressed as an organization. I appreciated the way they described their cultural activities and the value of music and creative expression in the lives of their constituents and the people that they work with. I was a little bit troubled at first when I was reading through their opportunity creation, where they sort of defined themselves as, saying that music education was their medium, but not their mission. But I understood better as I looked more deeply into the organization, what they meant by that, that they're really looking to empower and create self-esteem and all kinds of things that the arts are very good at helping us with as we develop as people. So I gave full points for that response. And I also was concerned about the lack of a marketing plan. So those are my comments.
Thanks so much, Alka and Sue. Excuse me. Do other panelists have any comments that you made that you'd like to share? Any additional thoughts?
Seeing as there are no further comments, if you would please finalize your scores. And then once you have finished finalizing your scores, just give me a thumbs up. That way we know when we can move on to the next application. Zell is good. Sue is good. Chloe's good. Onyx is good. And Alka's good. So next application up for review. So that was Girls Rock, Austin. Next up is Callisto Gaia Press. Zell and Alka are our primary and secondary. And Zell, whenever you're ready to begin. Oh, and I don't know if you're speaking, Zell, but you're muted.
Callisto Gaia Press, their project for the next year is to widen the visibility and availability of Callisto Gaia publications and events. They want to see their publication in more outlets, staff involved at in-person events, and like the Texas Book Festival and similar. The more people know about their commitment to supporting and nurturing literary artists, the more they can do, both for contributions to Austin and growing reputation as a vibrant cultural hub. Some of the activities that their mission is, as a literary nonprofit, we're dedicated to supporting diverse writers at all stages of all careers. We believe that support benefits not only the writers themselves, but the community as a whole, and helps nurture a vibrant culture atmosphere in Austin and across the state and country. We aim to reach and support those who produce, consume, and love the written word. Our core belief is that that art should never be taken for granted. Artists should be paid for their work. Therefore, we pay our contributors on publications, which is rarity in the nonprofit literary world. So I felt that this application was not for this grant cycle because they did not focus on a key constituency. They had a broad aspect of writers that they would want to work with. And for that reason is why I didn't feel it was a strong application for this particular grant cycle. That's pretty much it.
Okay, thank you, Zell.
Mhm.
Secondary, Alka?
I won't say that they're not for this grant cycle, but I'll say that I did write that I think they're doing very interesting work, but they are also serving many constituencies, and all of them might be or many of them might be fitting into the historically marginalized communities, but they're not honing in on any specific key constituents which are at a risk of cultural erasure. So having said that, when that kind of a thing comes up for an application, then the most of the application is defined by that. I did give them strong points for the way they presented their budget, as well as for the opportunities they're creating for their community, and or for the larger community that they serve. I do agree with Zell in the sense that they don't specifically serve a cultural community at a risk of erasure at this point. Or at least this application is not geared for that. I mean, I'm sure they're doing programming, but if they'd written about a specific program which was only catered to something like this, then it would have probably fit in better. Yeah.
Thank you, Zell. Thank you, Alka. And again, just a reminder that it's not consensus scoring, as Jesus said, so it's valuable to hear the comments and the feedback from each panelist. Anyone else have anything in addition to what's been said that they'd like to share?
Seeing as there are no further comments, if you would please finalize your scores. And then again, please let me know when you're finished with your scores. Chloe's good. Zell's good. Sue's good. Onyx and Alka are good too. All right. And then this will be our final application before we break for lunch. The City Theater Company, Onyx and Zell are our primary and secondary. And Onyx, whenever you are ready to begin.
All right. So City Theater's mission is to provide diverse and challenging theater works that are engaging and accessible. I felt like the mission was overall well stated. However, I did note that while it was well stated and crafted, I felt like it lacked, again, specificity. I felt it was rather general and didn't specifically address who the key constituencies are. For example, they mentioned, we hope to celebrate the rich cultural diversity of our amazing city. The idea is to be a true representation of what really is great about Austin, namely its openness and passion for creativity. I felt it was just too general, so that was one note that I made. I felt like application could have benefited from more specificity in that section. When it came to the history of the organization service, I also noted that the response was vague. And the response shows the organization has a history of service that seeks to broadly serve all communities. For example, the primary initiative at City Theater is to always be moving, always creating, always creating the opportunity for art, sorry. Cultural leadership component, I felt, again, the answer was too general, as the response mainly listed the professional qualifications of the board and leadership, but does not mention how they represent the key constituents. When it came to intersectionality, one note that I made was I struggled a little bit to how to process the color blindness component of the response. So for instance, when it came to the additions, they mentioned CTC maintains a commitment to colorblind casting, allowing actors to be cast in roles without being bound by traditional archetypes. And then CTC also maintains a commitment to cultural equity by communicating the benefits of diversity and cultural enrichment to the audience through its production. However, they did not address which productions or in what ways those productions address intersectionality. So I felt, again, this could be an opportunity for the organization to just expand a little bit more on that intersectional lens. They do not offer, we do not have specific specialized programming for individuals with disabilities, was one thing that I noted too. And when it came to their programmatic reach, I noted that the response was a little bit more on the aspirational side, again, a little too general. So I felt like more clarity when it came to their plan, programmatic reach, I felt could have benefited the application. And then when it comes to their budget, one note that I made was that there were no admin fees listed in the budget and no explanation for that space. However, their deficits were well explained, and they described the rent costs, other elements, as well as the impact of the pandemic. So that is my summary. Thank you.
Thank you, Onyx. Real quick before we move on to the secondary, just want to make sure I understood for the colorblind casting, is it just that you needed more specificity? You had mentioned something about that and you were confused by it or something like that. So just wanted to, if you could expand on that comment on why it was troubling for you.
Because mainly when I've heard about being colorblind, it's not in the best of approach when it comes to like equity, like to say I don't see color or I'm colorblind is something that I've struggled to I try to stay away from that. So it's when I saw it here, especially I didn't know exactly how to read it, so I just wanted to make a note of that. So that was my struggle where as far as they relate to this section. But I'm open to see what other people hear. Maybe that could also help me understand better.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that clarification, Onyx. Secondary, Zell?
I just second everything that she had. What I said at this point would be repeating, so.
Right. Thank you both. Other comments from other panelists?
I do want to just
Okay.
add that even I felt that that there were a lot. It's very well written, the application, but I felt like there were a lot of generalizations for a lot of the answers. I wish that they had given examples, like Onyx said. You know, they said this, but they didn't give an example of this. So if they, it would have been a really good application if they'd actually given us specific examples of how they achieved what they're saying they did. It would have really helped.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anything to add? If we have time, Jesus, I just wanted to say one thing, and this, okay, thank you. Might be helpful, as folks are scoring or not, but just to be aware that, so the term colorblind in theater, as some of you are probably already aware, is kind of a term of art, that there's colorblind casting, there's color conscious casting, and these are different ways in the theater world that theater companies address, are we gonna have, can Black actors only play Othello, or can Black actors play, other roles, or so that it does have a specificity, in the term. So if that's something that you all are sitting with as you're scoring, you might want to look into that a little bit and see if that helps clarify some of your questions.
Thank you for that, Jen. We have about 3.5 minutes left. If there are any additional comments from the panel. Olga, I see you came off of mute, so I don't know if that was on purpose. If you had another comment. No? Okay. If there are no further comments, panel, if you would please finalize your scores. And so again, we will be, thank you, Zal. We will be breaking for lunch. We're a little bit ahead of schedule. It's around 11:30. Again, on our website, we posted kind of the applications we would be reviewing both before lunch and after lunch. So in case anybody who is being reviewed after lunch wanted to see their review live, even though we are recording this, we will go ahead and break for lunch. So we will go ahead and pause the recording. All righty, and we are back from lunch for the Elevate panel. I'm going to repeat an announcement that I made when we began in the morning, just since we are back from lunch. My name is Jesus Pantel. I am the Cultural Funding Supervisor. We have Maya Williams-Britton here as well, with helping with tech support. Rachel Osgood from the Long Center is providing backup tech support as well. I will be facilitating our Elevate panel meeting today. Jen Margulies is our outside equity consultant facilitator, making sure that both myself and the panelists are keeping equity centered in our new pilot funding programs. The review panelists have looked at, today we are looking at the organizations in panel 2. So this is mid-sized nonprofit organizations, $43,000 to $134,000 budget size. The panelists have reviewed all of the applications prior to today. They have tentatively made comments and scored on all of them. They can change their scores during the session, but are not required to, just depending on the feedback they received from their fellow panelists. And they will finalize their scores as we're moving on to the next application. We'll give a little bit of time in between for them to finish doing that. We have a maximum of 10 minutes per application. I will be timing those and making sure that we have the correct amount of time for each application. If for some reason we have any technical difficulties, I will pause the timer so that way everybody gets the full 10 minutes they are allotted. We've been averaging probably about 5 minutes or so per application, but if we do get close, I will give a 3-minute warning, a 2-minute warning, a 1-minute warning, a 30-second warning, and then counting down from 10 seconds, and then we will finalize review on that application, finalize scores, and move on to the next one. We are asking the panelists not to repeat comments that have already been said, but if they do have comments that have not been said by a previous panelist, then to go ahead and consider those, or maybe if something was said by a previous panelist, but there's more detail that the second panelist would like to provide, then that is fine as well. We are not scoring on consensus, so some panelists may have differing views on an application. That is fine. They can change their scores based on, again, their fellow panelists' feedback, but, we're not trying to, come to consensus or, everybody should, you should change your score to this because I think that, X, Y, and Z. The comments, so yeah, we're not scoring on consensus. We have asked the panelists not to announce a numeric score, just to provide overall application comments. And their comments should be in alignment with the review criteria. So that means they should not be, taking things that are not in the application out, into consideration, unless they have firsthand experience or they've visited your website, which they were not required to do unless it was listed as part of your work sample. We have also asked the panelists to look beyond grantsmanship to the extent that they can. They may make comments about something being hard to find, but if they were able to find it, even if it was in a different section, they should score accordingly. If a panelist has a conflict of interest, we will have one later this afternoon. They will just recuse themselves from the live review, and they have not reviewed or provided scores on those on that application. So it's not going to count against the applicant. We just will not consider their score when we're averaging, the other panelist scores to come to the final score for your application. The panelists who have a conflict and are recusing themselves will just turn off their camera and mute themselves while that application is being discussed, and then we will invite them back once the once the scores have been finalized for that application. So let me get my timer ready and we will start with our first application back from lunch. And again, the application timer will not start until the primary starts making their comments. And so our next application up for review is Contra Common. Chloe and Zell are our primary and secondary. And Chloe, whenever you're ready to begin.
Contra Common provides affordable and accessible services to emerging artists. Their programming includes providing studio space to artists, opportunities to exhibit in a professional gallery setting, and chances to teach or participate in classes and workshops. I feel like they're headed in the right direction. The cost of living has skyrocketed, which has made it harder for artists to get studio space here on top of their rent and other monthly expenses. And many artists are being displaced with no access to things like presses or professional galleries for emerging artists specifically. It can also be difficult to find a mentor with no connections as an emerging artist. So Contra Common does help with all this, but I think they could improve on a few things, like their mission and key constituencies category felt a little bit too broad. Many artists are being priced out of Austin, but they might not all experience the same discrimination and inequality seen in marginalized communities. In the cultural activity sections, they don't go into detail about specific programming that has been created by and for members of marginalized communities. They talk about how they give them space to show their work, but don't go into future proposed events and how that might be tourist accessible. Their future plans for artist residencies are great, and it's an awesome opportunity to elevate artists with disabilities, LGBT, and BIPOC communities. Their programmatic reach section talks about trying to initiate new programs to extend their reach to a broader audience, but don't specify how these programs will retain existing audiences and reach new audiences within communities that are at immediate risk of cultural erasure and displacement in Austin. This kind of like, how are they trying to get the word out with a marketing plan? That wasn't super clear. And that's basically it. A pretty all right proposal. There is some room for improvement, but I think they are headed in the right direction.
Thank you, Chloe. Secondary, Zell?
I have nothing to add to that. I support everything Chloe said.
Thanks, Sal. Thanks, Chloe. Other panelists, did you have comments to add? Yeah, Alka.
I just have a few notes in the I have a note which says the attachment of the board list was not accessible. I think they attached a few things which were in like the dot pages, so it was only accessible if you were on a Mac, and maybe I was not on one, so I wasn't able to access that. And even their work sample was not accessible in the format that it was attached in. So I have those two comments, and yeah, even to second Chloe about the marketing plan. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Oh yeah, Jesus.
Oh, I was just going to say, so I did go to the board list, and I'm on a PC myself, and it's in Pages, which I believe is a Mac application like Alka was talking about, so I'm not able to open that. What was the other application or the other attachment?
The work sample.
The work sample.
I had to
Okay.
go convert it specifically online through a program. So that was just a little bit of an extra step, but.
Oh, and I see the work sample is in something .key, K-E-Y. So, so good comments. Just to be mindful of the type of attachments that you're using, whether on a PC, if someone on a Mac will be able to access it, or on a Mac, if someone on a PC will be able to access it. Thank you for that. And just so the panelists and the applicants are aware, if the panelists do say something about not being able to open something or not seeing something, I do go and look at that while the application is being discussed, just to be sure. With that being said, other additional new comments from the panel? Seeing as there are none, if you would please panel, oh, Alka, yes. You came off mute, so okay. If you would please then, panelists, finalize your scores. And then let me know, just give me a thumbs up when you're done, so that way we know to move on to the next application. Onyx, Chloe, Alka, Zell. And Sue. All right. So that was Contra Common. Next application up for review is Density 512. Zell and Chloe are our primary and secondary. And Zell, whenever you're ready to begin.
So Density 512 is a chamber orchestra and a collective of brave open musicians who tell stories through music to communities throughout Central Texas. We connect with our community by producing imaginatively curated experiences, amplifying the voice of groundbreaking and emerging artists, and cultivating interdisciplinary collaborations. We are seeking, they're set up seeking $75,000. Their mission, one of the part that really stuck out to me was the way that they work, the folks who they work with in terms of who gets to provide the music or the direction the music is going and the way their concerts happen. I thought their history was really strong in the key constituencies and the areas that they're trying to work with people. I also enjoyed their cultural leadership was very clear and who are a lot of people with lived experience for the key constituencies that they're working with. They have very strong community voices, and I really love the ideas and the things that they're trying to do with their activities. They are really focusing on those key constituencies that they have identified in their mission and the history of working with those key constituencies. And with all that said, I felt like based off who they are and the people that they're working with in the different areas in the working with in the different communities, intersectionality was very clear, very strong. And again, their community relationships I thought was really strong. The idea of opportunities, they are providing a lot of opportunities for musicians who are coming through who actually get to be composers and write the music that they're working with. So I just thought it was a really strong application, and I really enjoyed reading and finding out about this organization.
Thank you, Zell. Secondary, Chloe.
I think some things to add on to that to just improve on. I feel like your ASL interpreter, if you can, should always be available. It was kind of an upon request only kind of thing that I noticed on there. And that's not considered a specialized service. And I think you should at least have, I feel like you should have a Spanish speaking usher at all shows and not just major ones, just in case something does come up. And then I don't feel like you go super in depth on your marketing plan. You're investing $5,000 into marketing, but don't really go into depth on like what you're specifically doing. And just kind of like how they're planning to engage with more audience members. But that's what I got.
Thank you, Zell and Chloe. Other panelists, things that you noticed in the application you'd like to comment on?
This was one of the applications that I rated most highly, I think, because I found I found it really hard to lop off any points for any of their. While I agree with Chloe, they could have definitely done a better job of the marketing plan, especially if you've assigned, the funding for it. It'll be great to have more clarity. But I found this application really, really strong for as per the rubric for us to grade.
Thank you, Alka. And I do just, want to remind folks that panelists were asked to review each application on its own merits. So there wasn't any ranking of the applications among one another, but simply, as Alka said, how each application related to the rubric scoring criteria. Anything else that folks want to add, other panelists?
There are no further comments. I did want to say real quick, and I think Chloe's comment still stands, but just to provide some clarity to the panel, They do say that they plan to leverage Elevate funding to hire Spanish speakers to work front of house at our events, delivering on the promise of our promotional materials. And earlier in that response, they talk about doing Spanish speaking promotional materials. But then to the specific comment that Chloe made, we also intend to hire a Spanish speaking usher for major events. So just a little bit of clarity on that, the ushers for the major events, but they do have Spanish speakers for other activities. So just keep that in mind as you are scoring your application. Any further comments from the panel? If there are no further comments, please finalize your scores and then just give me a thumbs up when you are ready. Chloe's good. Zell, Alka, Onyx, and Sue. All right. So next application up for review is Print Austin Collective. Onyx and Chloe are our primary and secondary. And Onyx, whenever you're ready to begin.
Thank you. Okay, so Print Austin will be celebrating its 10th anniversary of community-oriented print-focused programming in 2024. They are requesting support for several expos, fairs, and print-related events such as the jury exhibition. As far as their mission, I noticed that they mentioned in their mission honoring the medium, but didn't really expand on how the organization is rooted in serving communities that have experienced forms of institutional marginalization or been underfunded. So the way they frame this angle is to mention the historically underfunded and underrepresented medium of printmaking and how it has been utilized by Black, Brown, and other communities as a platform for social justice movement. So that was one note that I made. Then, sorry, the glare is a little hard to see. The response provided as far as their cultural leadership did not explicitly address the representation of Print Austin's community. For example, executive director, board of directors, creative advisors, etc. It would be beneficial to include information about how the organization's leadership reflect and represents the diverse perspectives and voices. As far as community voice and community voice, I noted that, one second. They are committed to inclusivity, and this is one thing that I noted in my review. And how they exemplified this, I thought it was a good thing to include a success story or example. Again, bringing it back to this idea of adding examples, being specific. The story of, oh man, I can't see it. MC Carey, whose experience as a self-taught printmaker from a marginalized intersection underscores the empowering and radical impact of printmaking. So I thought that was good that they included that. I felt like they were trying to add more specifics in that answer. When it came to disability communities and their approach to it, I noted that their answer demonstrated a commitment to being more accessible. They have different ways they do that, from using virtual options to a podcast project they're working on as well. So those were things that I noted. Note also on ESL is that they mentioned the podcast. They partnered with an organization called Hello Print Friend to include podcast interviews with some of their artists in Spanish. They gave some examples of this. However, I noted that this project seemed to be not so directly connected to their programming, as they're partnering through some other organizations to have this done. So that was another note that I wanted to highlight. And then my last note regarding their budget is that their budget is focused on programmatic expenses and admin costs. The budget showed a deficit for the fiscal year 2022, which was somewhat covered and described in the description, but not explicitly. For example, Print Austin's programming happens at the beginning of the calendar year, so we reserve funding. We reserve funding to cover expenses prior to the revenue streams building back up. In 2022, we migrated to a new payroll system, so this might have contributed to that. So those were my main notes for Print Austin.
Thank you. Secondary, Chloe?
So I agree with everything Onyx just said. I feel like they are giving artists a place to sell their art and an opportunity to work with a juror or a curator, but they aren't really providing them with a whole bunch of long-term resources. They talk about how they're providing network opportunities, but I've been to Print Austin. It's a large room with artists together, and as a printmaker, and I'm not associated, I've never been with Print Austin. That kind of happens naturally when you put a large group of artists in a room together. I feel like all over your application, there's mentions of community and all this stuff, and it would just, I don't know, I feel like it'd be cool to find more long-term resources based off of that community aspect that's mentioned all over the place, like partnering up printmakers and stuff like that. I think in the cultural activities and relevance responsive section, not a lot of equity or racial equity is even brought up. It's just a lot of the events listed. And then I do like what you're doing for the immunocompromised community in your accessibility section, like Onyx mentioned, but I kind of want to know what's going on for the disabled community that's physically in attendance, because online is cool, but what's going on for the people who are there? And then I also like, same thing, I kind of felt like the Latinx voices were kind of an added thing. It felt kind of like a bonus, as it's not really specialized programming. But I just feel like overall this proposal was just missing some key aspects, but I feel like there is a lot of room for improvement, but that's all I got.
Thank you, Onyx and Chloe. The other panelists have additional comments.
Yeah, I thought they missed an opportunity too when they were talking about who's on the jury, and if they could enlist past jury members so that we know that they have been working with these key constituents, communities, so that they have a history of it, but it wasn't present in this application. And I think that would have made this a stronger application.
Thanks, Elle. Any other comments?
If there are no further comments, if you would please finalize your scores. And then let me know when you are finished. Zell, Chloe, Sue, Alka, Onyx, I don't know if I saw your thumb and then you went off camera. You are still off camera, so. There we go.
Sorry about that. I had to go off camera for a sec, but I'm good.
You're good. Okay. So that was Print Austin Collective. We are moving on to our next application up for review, which is Inversion Ensemble. Chloe and Sue are our primary and secondary. And Chloe, whenever you're ready to begin.
So Inversion Ensemble is a collection of vocal ensembles dedicated to commissioning and performing new works by living composers with themed concerts. I can see the good that they're doing. I just feel like there's some more places that need improvement. In their mission sections, they have some great work examples, but their key constituencies are a tad bit too broad. Not all audience, singers and instrumentalists, etc., have the same experiences. In their history of service section, I felt like there were some things that were added there for quantity purposes over quality. I think saying that you provided a Black Lives Matter statement is cool, but it was almost like that was something that you were looking for. Like, I don't feel like that's like an awesome achievement. I feel like that's not like a history of service thing. I feel like that's just something you should have done. I feel like the cultural leadership doesn't go super into board members who have lived experiences. It doesn't even really go into the board members period. It mostly just talks about the program CODA that they came up with. In the community voice section, a majority of that community voices are surveys, which are a little bit too late in the leadership process. Cultural activities don't go into equity too much. They are wanting to empower the LGBTQ community, but it would be cool to see collaborations with queer choirs, just for some ways to kind of more opportunity creation. And then for your other parts of your opportunity creation, there aren't super, there are some great opportunities, but they don't specify how they're directly investing in programs for those who have experienced institutional marginalization or cultural erasure. And then finally, when it comes to accessibility accommodations, there are some like beyond the ADA requirements, but I feel like there could be like a little bit more because it was like just barely there. But overall, pretty nice work. Decent proposal. I just think that there's some places that need some tweaking.
I agree. Yeah, sorry, Jesus. I agree with what Chloe had to say. I did like the opportunities for many singers to participate, given that they have 4 different ensembles and they have different points of view for each of them. I think it's pretty exciting that they work in multiple, they present multiple world premiere performances of works by local Austin composers. I think that's a great point of view to come to the market with. Per the Elevate guidelines priorities, I didn't see a focus in the mission on communities at risk of cultural erasure or displacement. I understand that Inversion aspires to work more deeply with these communities, but I didn't understand from their history of service that if they've actually gone beyond supporting the composers. As far as intersectionality goes, based on their response, I didn't know if intersectionality is a key component of their work because they were concerned with privacy, they mentioned, which is very understandable, but perhaps Inversion or even any of the organizations that we might see over these 2 days could consider polling their constituencies to understand who their communities are, and then they could better be able to report out aggregated data versus something that might reveal someone's personal data. It might be a helpful way to help us connect to who they serve. And I just had one more small comment about the outreach and marketing. I wished that I had had a little bit more information to understand their work there. That's it.
Great, thank you both. Other comments to add from any other panelists? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, panelists. If there are no further comments, please finalize your scores. And then let me know when you are finished, Chloe, Zell, Sue, everybody. Yes, okay, thank you. So moving on to our next application up for review is Jarrett Productions. Alka and Sue are our primary and secondary. And Alka, whenever you're ready to begin.
So Jared Productions is oops, wrong. Yes, so Jared Productions is requesting funding for their 23-24 season and a new program. They're presenting 2 shows, both at Trinity Street Playhouse, where they have a rental agreement on the books, which is actually great because a lot of organizations struggle with space, and that's good. They have that in place. And they're launching an inaugural community program. So it's a first-time program to offer space and opportunity to underrepresented, unproduced artists to have their works shown performed free of charge to the public in conjunction with the runs of the main stage production. So, and they're going to provide them with financial and organizational support. I felt like the mission of serving the underserved communities is an add-on, is not necessarily, it's like a additional program, not a part of what they're actually planning to do. So I feel like the application's mission seems rooted in serving communities that have experienced marginalization, but the organization's mission statement does not explicitly say that their mission is rooted in serving communities which are at an immediate risk of cultural erasure and displacement within Austin. So the focus, according in the history section, the focus on seniors, I really, really appreciate that. I think they are definitely an overlooked community. So I did give them high points for that. Their cultural leadership, majority of the applicants, administrative and creative leadership have a deeply rooted cultural understanding. So that's strong. In the relevance section, the proposal includes content for key constituent groups, but it is not. It felt like it was for that group, but not developed by the group. So I felt a little bit that they could have had more representation on people who were creating content. I think they have great community in-kind support. Their student mentorship programs are great. Marketing goals are listed, but not a plan to really achieve those goals. And my final point is that since their in-kind support is really strong in terms of artist time and sets and props and things donated, they could have added that to the budget, which is not there right now. So, but that's all I have.
Thank you. Secondary, Sue?
Don't have much to add. I really appreciate Alga's comprehensive review on that. I guess I would say, and this may be a repeat, so sorry, but I do believe this group is working hard to catch up to the ideas or the priorities of the Elevate guidelines. They're seeking ways to fit within the guidelines, and they're making efforts, and they have made efforts, but I don't think that they're quite there yet. I think they're still in the aspirational stage. So I appreciate the work that they're trying to do, and I appreciate the work that they have done within their company as it is now, and look forward to seeing what they do next.
Thank you, Alka and Sue. Other panelists, do you have anything to add?
While panelists are thinking if they have anything else to add, I will say for the budget that no match was required. So all that was required to be shown in the budget was the city request amount and how that would be shown. But so take that into consideration, but also for the applicant, if they're watching live or watching the recording later, we do ask the panelists to provide feedback on ways that could improve future applications. So just keep that in mind, both applicants and panelists. With that being said, any other additional comments for this application? Seeing as there are none, if you would please finalize your scores. And let me know when you have completed your scores for this application. Sue, Chloe, Alka, Zell, and Onyx. Okay. Next application up for review is ATX Theater. Sue and Alka are our primary and secondary. And Sue, whenever you're ready to begin.
So ATX Theater is an interesting organization within Austin. They support all theater going and theater making across organizational boundaries. They support 80 different theater companies. And they connect audiences to those theaters. They were a grassroots startup nonprofit arts organization that stretches across these 80 companies and the artists who work with them. Their intention is to reflect Austin's cultural variety and increase theater accessibility, especially for young people, and they're trying to build a welcoming, vibrant community within their sector. It's really interesting they're doing that, and they're also proposing within this this application to create a tour of a play that's going to be going to 100 different schools in Austin for children, prioritizing communities that have sought or that have experienced marginalization and or cultural displacement. And they're doing that through bringing this play to their schools, and then eventually, once they've gone through that process, they'll bring 4 public performances for anybody to be able to go see it. Their work in general is interesting because it's basically it's an overlay organization that supports a whole bunch of different theaters, and as such, because not all these theaters are fitting within the priorities of the elevation guidelines, I struggled with how to score this group based on that. But their stated mission is, and their constituencies are children with less access, to Austinites on tight budgets, marginalized theater makers, and local actors. That does not specifically root them in communities that have suffered from cultural erasure or displacement, although it is or working alongside at times. The community voice that they have explained, they do have quite a bit of connection, obviously through the basics of their work, and the conversation that they shared in this application around the theater production that they're going to be bringing forward. The theme is women's rights, which is not specifically related to cultural erasure and displacement or communities that are experiencing this, but it is getting display to key constituencies within Austin. So I scored this application sort of in the middle of the opportunities for scoring in this. In general, I thought that they are working hard to fit within the elevation guidelines, but they still have some growth possible there to connect with exactly what it is that Elevate is about. With that, I'll close my comments.
Thank you, Sue. Secondary, Olga.
I could see Sue was struggling, as was I. I think this was a tricky application to kind of, score by the rubric, as per the rubric. It's definitely, I think it's doing very important work right now in terms of being an aggregator of sorts of all the theaters in town, and the one-stop shop for everybody knowing the theater scene in Austin. I mean, that's amazing, the work that they're doing. Proposal is for the play, and that they want to bring to the schools, which is great. But as such, I think as per the rubric, it didn't talk to a specific community at the risk of cultural erasure. And again, so that kind of informs how you score the application. A few specifics I have are, I said it's an interesting organization. Yeah, I repeated that. Serving marginalized communities is not integral to the mission of the organization. I didn't get a clear idea of their history of service. They seem very new. I couldn't even tell the year the organization was set up. The Form 990 didn't provide any information. And perhaps they were, they're a newly formed nonprofit, so maybe they don't have all that information yet. Their main activity, which Sue also spoke about, the Edith Williams, the play and the touring across 100 classrooms sounds really extremely interesting and interactive. But it would have been great to have more details in terms of which schools or even the areas that they were planning to go to. And the budget form was missing for me. I don't know, Jesus, maybe you can check. But though they do have details in the budget answer, within the application, they've kind of they've provided an explanation of what money they're asking for and how is it allocated, but the form itself was not there. I mean, that's it.
Thank you both. Onyx, I saw your hand up earlier. Did you have a comment that you wanted to offer, or was that a stretch?
I did have a comment. 1 second. Mainly through to the section of intersectionality, I feel like this is a good example of that provided kind of like a very general answer. So for example, I mentioned intersectionality was not explored in the answer through specifics and was rather general. For example, intersectionality is why we make theater and why we promote it. Honoring individual experience is the only way to unite theater goers and theater makers. It's like something that I felt like it was not even answering the question. So that was my comment, and I hope that it can be helpful for other organizations, that this is like, I think, a common theme that I noticed. That intersectionality was just kind of maybe not as well understood. So that was my comment for this.
Thank you, Onyx. Did anyone else have anything to add? I think we have about 2 minutes. Okay. Thank you all.
Thank you, panelists. I did look. Oh, Alka, did you have something to say?
Yeah, I was just going to ask you about the budget.
Yeah, I did look through the budget, or look through the attachments. I looked through each one of them. I did not see any that was a budget form. I did see the 990 but other than that, did not see anything, the budget form. We have just over a minute left. Any final comments from the panel? If not, please finalize your scores. And let me know when you have completed your scoring. Onyx, Chloe, Sue, did I see your thumb up? Yes, everybody's thumbs up. Okay, great. Thank you. Next application up for review is Austin Book Arts Center. Sue and Onyx are our primary and secondary. And Sue, whenever you're ready to begin.
Excellent. Austin Book Arts Center is a wonderful Austin organization that studies the arts of making books. They have been housed at Flatbed Press for years, and then they moved in 2019 to North Lamar. They've experienced steady and continued growth in their mission, which is through verbal and visual storytelling, problem solving, original thinking, book making, promotes literacy, creativity, and self-expression. Bookmaking accommodates students with different learning styles and abilities and creates unforgettable experiences. This is an organization that's been around for quite a while. They are working on their diversity. It appears. I think one of their big efforts that fits within the Elevate's priority guidelines priorities are working with educators on their Let's Make a Books kits, where they distribute kits to AISD in dual language videos and kits to 120 educators, which is a lot. That being said, that is the primary connection that I see here for working within the communities and constituencies that have experienced cultural erasure or displacement within the city, or are in danger of experiencing that. So I looked for that within, their descriptions in the mission and in their cultural activities. And mostly I did not see connections to that specific priority within Elevate, connecting with community. Despite that, they do wonderful work with bookmaking, and I think they're in a kind of rare space within Austin, working within that genre. But the connection to the Elevate guidelines seems to be missing for the most part. I appreciated their descriptions within the opportunity creation, talking about creating jobs and the connections that they make with instructors at different schools. But I don't see a great connection to the Elevate guidelines priorities overall, as far as this organization. And so with that, I will pass it along.
Thank you. Onyx?
Yeah. One thing that stood out, I agree with everything. I have a few things that I hope that can be helpful. One of them is that they've been around for a long time, and as part of their working on their new leadership structure, they mentioned they're looking for the current ED is going to step down into a role of a consultant. It is unclear how leadership represents the community beyond their expertise in books and being well-educated professionals. Some questions that I was asking myself when I was reviewing this section was, have they begun ED search with a focus on BIPOC candidates? Will this position be the first fully paid position? I had many questions about this, so I just wanted to highlight that. And then within the intersectionality section, I noticed that the answer focused on diversity and inclusion efforts a little more than intersectionality. However, the examples it provided regarding past projects did exemplify some focus of intersectional programming. For example, working with trafficked women, severely abused and neglected communities, etc. So I feel like that could be a good opportunity. Could have been a good opportunity to expand on those projects. And then I also appreciated in the opportunity creation and community benefit the fact that, for instance, they've paid over $75,500 to local artists. They collaborate with small businesses and so on. And then as far as the disability community plans of reaching out to the deaf and hard of hearing by providing sign language interpretation and bookbinding workshops. So I felt like I could go on and on, but I feel like that was a good, approach that they have. And one note is that I couldn't find their budget. I couldn't open the file. So I don't know if it was just me, but I couldn't see it. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Sue and Onyx. Do other panelists have feedback on this one they want to share? Sue, so you looking for that budget?
I do not see anything that's marked as budget, but what I will do sometimes is do the preview to see if the budget itself is there and maybe misnamed. I'm not seeing that. I think just on the comment while I'm looking for that on the ED search, I think the way it was mentioned was as, something that could possibly strengthen future applications. So a good note for that. But just a reminder for the panelists to, score based on what is in the application or how it corresponds to the review criteria that you are looking for. Hope that makes sense. I am looking and talking at the same time. Okay, and I did not see, there were some multi-page documents, but I didn't scroll through them. The first page was not a budget, so I did not see a budget in here. So we have just over 3 minutes left. Any additional comments from the panel? Seeing as there are none, if you would please finalize your scores and let me know when you have done so. Zell, Alka, Chloe, Onyx, and Sue. All right. Moving on, we're scheduled for a break, but we've got about 10 minutes. We can go ahead and break now, or we can review one more application and then take the break. So we're closer to the 2 o'clock time we had scheduled for the break.
It's Sue. I'm noticing an issue with my next application review. We've got 2 scores in there right now, so I could take a second to fix that issue if you don't mind. If we could go to break now. Yeah,
we'll go ahead and take a break. That's what's listed on our website. It is 1:52. Let us come back at 8 + 7. We will come back at 2:07. That will be a 15-minute break. 2:07 when we resume. We are back from break, continuing the Elevate review panel. Our next application up for review is Austin Metamorphosis Dance Ensemble. Sue and Zell are our primary and secondary. And Sue, whenever you're ready to begin.
Sure. Metamorphosis Dance has stated that they're going to present 3 major productions that include full-length story ballets and original works that vary in genre from classical ballet to modern. Their mission is today's artists must collectively work to update the art form to embrace people from all genders, races, and body types and backgrounds. They began in 1993 as a training ground for aspiring professional dancers and moved on in 2019 to rebrand and simplify their name to Metamorphosis Dance. And they are one of only 2 professional companies that offer full-length classical story ballet productions. With that small introduction, they show themselves as being a long-term entity within the city, providing services to the community. They do not specifically state that their audience is within a specific community, but they talk more generally about embracing people from all genders, races, body types, backgrounds. They are seeking a vision of changing the shape of dance one body at a time or one dancer at a time. And they do work outside often. Their history of service mentions their audience attendance and the fact that they have people from all races, cultures, socioeconomic backgrounds. Again, not really specifically pointing towards the Elevate guidelines, which is seeking to elevate communities that have been at risk of cultural erasure and displacement. Their leadership is women-led and women-founded. They do talk about the struggles of being women in a world that is predominantly run by males, but again, not specifically talking about communities within Austin that are at risk of cultural erasure. I did give them high marks for intersectionality. They talk about welcoming many gender types or gender identities, sexual orientations, races, and they talk about in their company the breakdown of just generally aggregated data of who dances within their company. I felt like their community relationships were in a good place, that they had strong communities going on as a support for their group. They did talk about partnering with and employing local Austin dancers and choreographers and local Austin skilled workers as opportunity creation. But again, the applicant shows that the investment, it may have temporary or individual benefit for previously identified key constituencies. As they responded to the accessibility was sort of specifically ADA within ADA regulations. There was not an extra accessibility accommodation offered, and then underneath the Spanish language or any kind of language, specialized language access. They did talk about Spanish language and that they hope to be able to offer programs in the future that are translated into Spanish, but they don't have the funding to do that quite yet. So hopefully they will be able to do that in the future. The marketing plan was not very well fleshed out here, but the budget was clear and was fairly well explained. And with that, I'll turn it over.
Thank you. So
I second everything there. I have nothing to add.
Thank you. Other comments from additional panelists?
if there are no new additional comments from the
And
panel.
I'm sorry, I do have one quick little one. In
Yes.
terms of the opportunities that they could create, I know Sue touched this a little bit, but it would have been nice in there to talk about really identifying key constituencies and bringing them in for this opportunity, especially in photography, dancers. There's a large number of Black and brown dancers, maybe listing some of those people or companies that they would like to get dancers from. I think that would have made this a better eye-opening experience application for us.
Thank you, Zell.
Thank you, Zell. Additional comments from the panel? If not, if you would please finalize your scores and let me know when you have done so. And just for the applicants in attendance, Onyx, we are asking the panelists not to repeat comments that have been previously made by other panelists, just to add any new comments that they might have. Sue, Chloe, Zell, Alka. All right, everyone has finalized their scores, so we will move on to the next application, which is Austin Civic Orchestra Society. Onyx and Alka are our primary and secondary, and Onyx, whenever you're ready to begin.
All right. So their mission is to provide high quality musical experiences to the community and a musical outlet for musicians. I commented that one second, I'm just reading my notes. So they've been around since 1977, and they have a vision to provide high quality and affordable musical experiences for lower and middle income communities, music enthusiasts. And one thing that I noted is that I feel that based on the response, there's been progressive change to some of their programming as well as policies. So for instance, in 1980, the number of concerts and locations increased, providing more opportunities for key constituents to participate in the art form. And also in 2008, the board decided to allow free of cost admission for those who are 18 and under. In 2016, they intentionally started expanding their educational programs to increase access and awareness, and created several programs which are listed in the response. So based on those examples, I made my score, and I also appreciated how as part of their programming, they also talked about, I think it was pre-concert or pre-performance or post-performance. I can't remember if it was pre or post, but conversation. So I thought that was another great way to engage the community. I also appreciated how in their cultural leadership, they broke down demographics. So how many men, how many women, what age ranges, they provided examples, and I appreciated that in the response. Then I also noted that they have a newly formed ACO long-term planning committee that's developing a 5-year plan for the orchestra. They also were able, through efforts like that, to survey the community and gain feedback. As a result of that, they were able to recognize what concerts have worked well with the community. And they've also made amends to the organization's bylaws and member handbook as a way to include codes of conduct to prevent discrimination, harassment, disrespectful behavior, and so on. There's also a diversity, equity, and inclusion committee formed to provide direction, including different policies. But essentially, I mentioned all of this to highlight that I felt that this organization was making an intentional effort to revise their policies, think about access for those 18 and under, how do they think about community engagement. When it came to the intersectionality component, although they did not expand further on their response, they did mention how the project addresses intersectionality and inclusion with 2 concerts where gender overlaps with ethnicity. I note that when it came to their ESL accessibility plans, they did not expand on how a program like Mexican Gems, for instance, which is one of the program, might reflect ESL accessibility, but they did mention programs printed in both English and Spanish, so performance programs. I felt that their budget provided enough details to clearly understand the components, and those are my main notes. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Onyx, that was amazing. It was really very thorough. I agree with everything that that you've noted. And along the same lines, I felt like they had written about a lot of things that they were going to do. So, and they seemed to have put things in place to make all of those happen. So they had been thinking about, intentionally including programs and people to the organization, which would take them, but they've been around since 1977. So, they're not new. They've been around enough to have already put some programs in place, which I felt was kind of missing. But having said that, I do feel that they're intentionally working towards it. They have been evolving, ever since, and they're working towards it. But as of now, they don't really serve a specific community at the risk of cultural erasure. So again, that informed how I graded the application. Agree with everything you said. I also really appreciated the details in the budget. I thought that at least their marketing outreach, they had some more specifics, which I appreciated, rather than just generally saying, we'll do outreach and reach a bigger community. They actually say how and how they're going to increase outreach. But yeah, that's all I have to add.
Thank you, Onyx and Alka. Any other perspectives, comments that other panelists want to share?
Seeing as there are no other comments, if you would please finalize your scores and let me know when you have done so. Onyx, Zell, Chloe, Sue, Olka. All right. Next application up for review is Mass Gallery Inc. Alka and Chloe are our primary and secondary, and Alka, whenever you're ready to begin.
Sorry, my computer sometimes takes a long time to open, load new pages. But so this is Mass Gallery, and their project summary is that they exist as a volunteer-led, volunteer-run democratic collective built by artists, educators, and arts administrators who are dedicated to creating a site for creative and social action in collaboration with artists and organizations from and for the LGBTQIA community, A+ community. And then they've written what their events and programs are going to be. I think their mission very clearly is to serve the BIPOC and LGBTQIA+ community. I rated this application pretty high. In addition to having clarity for the constituents and fitting in with what Elevate's priorities are. I thought they did great work in all of the responses for the application. I only, cut off a few points for their language accessibility because I felt like they're aspiring to do much, but currently they don't have any programs in place, and that could very well be because of lack of funding. And then their marketing plan could have more details, could be a little more clear. And a final note I have is that I see they have a very large percentage of the total budget, almost 50%, which is attributed to rent. So just a note saying, to balance that with the programming and the artist payments and everything. It's overall, this was a very strong application for me. I really thought that they're doing great work in the community. Their history of service was very, very clear. They've listed things very clearly over time, which I really appreciated. their cultural leadership was particularly, it stands out, again, for the way they have explained it. Their leadership has people who are, who identify as Latinx, queer, and first generation. So it's wonderful how they've really, the organization seems like it is of and by the people that they serve. Very strong community ties, support from the community in terms of in-kind, as well as donated goods and services. So yeah, that's all I have.
Thank you. Secondary, Chloe?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you just said. I really hope to see these craft workshops and classes be offered. That sounds really interesting. I think maybe it would be great to see more voices from the Go Valley neighborhood when it comes to cultural leadership or community voice. That area specifically, and I'm not saying y'all are contributing to this, has suffered from a lot of gentrification, and sometimes those galleries playing a role in it. But it would be nice to have neighborhood artists who may be at risk of being pushed out have a voice in all this. And I didn't see specifically if you already have that or not, but if you do, that's really cool. And yeah, your disability accommodations do need work. I do like the kind of alternatives that you listed there, but I don't know if you kind of go into how you're going to fix that in your budget, or if you're going to use other outside funding for that. But overall, great proposal, and I hope things work out.
Thank you both. Any other comments, additional things that other panelists want to share?
Seeing as there are no other comments, if you would please finalize your scores and let me know when you have done so. Alka, Zell, Chloe, and everyone. Okay. Next application up for review is New School of Music. Zell and Sue are our primary and secondary. And Zell, whenever you're ready to begin. And you are muted, Zell.
So New School of Music, they want funding for their 23-24 season. They want to do a blue jazz festival in February 17-18. They want to do a annual jazz and blues festival in June, and they would like to do they do classes and student recitals starting August 23 through May 2024. Their mission is they were founded in 2013. New School of Music's mission is to serve the greater Austin community by sharing the gift of music through connection, exceptional professional musicians with students of all ages, and a lifelong study and enjoyment of music, while helping to provide free music instruction to underserved youth in the Austin area. So what I truly appreciated about them was that they listed all of the schools that they work with by name, and then they broke down demographically the percentage of the key constituency kids that they work with in those schools, which I absolutely really enjoyed that they were very specific about that. They also stated that they work with kids from K through 8th at Idea Public Schools, which is awesome, because I think Chloe said earlier how young kids don't get that music, the internship of music. And so to work with those kids, and then having some history of Idea, it seems like they will be able to work with those kids for a number of years, because those kids stay within the Idea school system. And so those kids would get an amazing musical education from these very talented folks at New School. They have a very diverse and strong leadership team. One second, sorry, I got notes everywhere, forgive me. So one of the things that I loved about it too is it said that New School of Music was founded in 2013 to address the lack of funding for music education in both public and charter schools in Austin. Since inception, we have been holding class at Cedars International Academy, a Title I school composed of 80% economically disadvantaged plus 90% students of color, 56% Hispanic, 35% Black. Our work at Cedars inspired us to set a scholarship goal of 50% for our total enrollment. This one-on-one for scholarship program provides free tuition to underserved children in both private lessons program and the Texas Jazz and Blues Camp. So I just thought that was truly amazing. The one knock that I had on them was their marketing plan for their events. They talked about getting ads in national magazine Downbeat, but they didn't list any local ads or KZI or any other radio stations for the key constituency. But that's a small knock on them. I thought this application was absolutely amazing.
Thank you, Zell. Sue.
Thanks. I think I do totally agree with Zal. I think this is a great application. I had a couple of notes. One is under the cultural leadership, the applicant shared data around the core teaching staff being composed of majority Black and Hispanic musicians, but I feel like the aggregated data around the leadership of the organization was not quite as clearly stated, and I would have appreciated a little more clarity on that. I did absolutely appreciate the cultural activities section where they were talking about all the work that they do, and gave them high marks for their intersectionality and community relationships. I think the one note about accessibility was that the applicant described what, that they're working alongside schools, and the schools offer a variety of accommodations, but those offerings aren't necessarily coming through New School, and maybe that's okay for them to just be able to have that opportunity because of their partnership. But I just wondered if there was other things that they could possibly offer that would support students as they move through their programming. Other than that, it was just a great application.
Thank you, Zell and Sue. Any comments from other panelists?
I have one note on this application, which says, I appreciated the scholarship program of having one child get free music education for one child who can afford to pay. So I thought that also kind of took it forward in terms of serving a particular demographic or subset. So I really appreciated that.
Thank you. Anybody else? Any other thoughts?
I'm sorry, I have one last thought too. The fact that they are working with special needs kids within the school system, and they're working with everybody, which I thought was amazing on their part. Now, I want to make sure I mentioned that. I thought that was really important.
Thank you, Zell.
There are no further comments from the panel. If you would please finalize your scores and let me know when you have done so. Zell, Chloe, Onyx, Sue, Alka. All right. Next application up for review is Golden Hornet Project. Zell and Onyx are our primary and secondary. And Zell, whenever you're ready to begin.
Golden Hornets, they're looking for funding for the 23-24 season. It will encompass our Young Composers Concert and Insectium. The Young Composers Concert is a free 6-month-long mentorship program for local youth with an emphasis on equity. Students develop a new work of music and participate in a final performance. Insectium is a collaboration between Graham Reynolds, Susie Ibarra, and Jeffrey Ziegler with entomologists Joanna Holly and Alex Weil. The project focuses on the conversation of insect communities. Golden Hornets' mission is to reimagine classical music through collaboration and adventurous programming. while upholding commitments to justice and innovation. We believe in making classical music more accessible and engaging for our diverse audiences. This application was a little challenging for me because later on they go on to talk about another program that they have called MXTX. Where they're working with 40 DJ producers and composers who are some of them are based in the Rio Grande, and they work with these brown children here in Austin. But that's a key constituency, but you really had to dig for that information. So it felt like it was kind of secondary in this application. They also one of their work sample, it was watching those kids work. Those kids, that work sample, it did not seem that the work sample of the kids who are in this program where they're working, these kids, they compose a piece and then they work with professional musicians to create it and perform it. But it was really hard to see if those kids are actually coming from key constituencies. And then the question of how are they getting these children? How do they market to get these children to be in this amazing program? So that was kind of a ding for me. Also wanted to say that I had hard to score because the mention the students is a key constituency, but they never in the grant tell you where the students are coming from or how they're reaching the students. The work sample finally explained it. They reach out to band directors, which says there is which is assuming they're reaching kids that are in a music program. So some schools don't have music programs. So how are they working with those schools that don't have a music program at all and providing this amazing opportunity to these kids? And let's see, they also mentioned, they also stated that they want to start working with Black children, but again, that felt like an afterthought in this application of this amazing program and this leadership that's so focused on that. They did say that they have hired a new Black board member to kind of lead that lead this campaign to start working with Black children to get them through this program as well. So that is, then I think that's pretty much all I got.
Thank you, Zal. Onyx?
Yeah, let me see. Okay, so some of the notes that I included here that excuse me excuse me stood out to me were the community voice. I thought that their Insectium program and just they have like a really cool sort of like program where it seemed to me based on the response, trying to engage the students beyond just sort of like passive and more engaged. So for example, they have a program called Young Composers Concert, as Elle mentioned, and I appreciated that they mentioned that the students get to take initiative creating compositions, and their involvement also extends beyond just composition making, but also other creative aspects such as learning about instrumentation and lighting and project, so like setting up the actual performance experience. So I thought that was really, I think, very valuable. I appreciated that they are collaborating with, I hope I'm gonna say this right, but entomologists. So they're bringing this other layer to their programming too, where like they're bringing in these entomologists who work with their community and then creating this performance that is engaging the students. So I just felt like it was really nice, thought out project. And then when it came to intersectionality, I scored them high. Sorry, I scored them. Shouldn't have said the range. Sorry. Because they did mention that they focus on the redistribution of power and opportunities to artists from diverse racial and gender groups. So I thought that was cool and an effective way to answer that question. 1 second. I did score them low in the oh my god. I did knock some maybe points off because in the accessibility component, they did mention that their programs are held in physically accessible spaces, but I didn't feel like it went kind of like beyond that. So I just maybe, yeah, took some points off there. And those were my main points. I apologize. I shouldn't have said the ranges, but yeah.
That's fine. Thank you, Onyx. Yes, we have instructed the panelists just to kind of give general comments, but if you are saying you're scoring, a particular section or an overall application high or low, that's fine as well. So thank you for that. And Jen usually asks, but since I'm on the mic, any additional comments, new comments from the panel? Seeing as there are none, if you would please finalize your scores and let me know when you have done so. Alka, Onyx, Chloe and Zell, and Sue. All right. Next application up for review is Artly World. We do this semi-randomly, but we have Zell as primary again, so 3 in a row. So Zell is primary for Artly World, Chloe is secondary. Zell, whenever you are ready to begin.
Okay, here we go. Artly World is seeking funding to support the expansion of our public arts and cultural programs featuring artists, musicians, and performers from Austin's South Asian immigrant community. Our proposed activities include workshops, performances, and other creative events for public audiences to engage with South Asian art forms and cultural traditions, interact with local artists and performers from Austin's South Asian community, and celebrate cultural significant holidays, festivals, and events. Overall, I felt that this application was very strong. Their mission is, Artly World's mission is to empower communities by creating opportunities to celebrate acts of creativity and engage in meaningful cultural experiences through the arts. We work passionately to achieve this mission in 2 ways. 1, by providing arts and music programs for all ages, audiences to celebrate and develop greater appreciation for diverse cultural traditions. And 2, by providing opportunities for artists and performers to share their work with audiences in Austin, especially work by cultural bearers and specialists representing the vibrant artistic traditions of Austin's diverse racial, ethnic, and cultural groups. Although that sounds very broad, when you get into the application, they really focus on the key constituency from the way that they were formed, the way the organization was formed, the cultural activities that they provide. There was also a multi-generational element of this application too that I felt was very strong. And intersectionality I thought was really great across the board. The community relations, they are very, very supported financially and through other means by their community. And opportunity creation, they create a lot of opportunities for South Asian artists in Austin to be able to have a space to perform or do their artwork. So I thought overall it was a really strong application. I felt that they focused on the key constituency and they really supported their activities throughout. So that's all I got on that one.
Thank you. Secondary, Chloe?
Yeah, I agree. It's a pretty strong application. I think the things that I would say is I feel like in your accessibilities section, it's really cool that you do online stuff. I think it's really awesome for people who can't attend in person, but I would have also liked to know what you were doing for people who are attending in person, because it is a lot of hands-on. So that would have been really nice to hear more about. I think in your community relationships section, I think it'd be really interesting to see you collaborate more with other South Asian organizations in Austin. Like specifically, like I know you do collaborate with artists, but it'd be cool, even cooler to see more opportunities there. And then in your cultural leadership category, I think you only talk about 2 of your board members and how they have lived experiences, but in your board list, there's another 3 that were failed to be kind of acknowledged. So it would have been nice to hear about those other 3 too. But other than that, very strong application. That's all I got.
Thank you both. Additional comments from other panelists?
Seeing as there are no other comments, if you would please finalize your scores. And then Chloe, Onyx, Zell, Alka, and Sue. Okay. We are scheduled to take a break. We have 5 more applications. We're a little bit ahead of schedule, about 15 minutes ahead. Since we only have 5 more applications, let's go ahead and take our break now. It is 2:46, so we will reconvene at 3:01. So a minute after 3 o'clock, we will reconvene. And we are back from break. Our next application up for review is VACAT. Alka and Sue are our primary and secondary. And Alka, whenever you're ready to begin.
So VACAT is basically asking for funding for 2 festivals, scholarships, annual health fairs, winter drive, Texas voting, etc. They're a Vietnamese organization, Vietnamese American Community Association of Austin, Texas. They are truly invested in, you know, a cultural community, specific cultural community, which is, you know, traditionally underfunded. They are doing more than arts. They, you know, they indulge in many different activities, you know, which is interesting. But fortunately, they still have some programs which are, you know, support the arts and arts education. So I did rate this this application highly. I found that you know, they have been working and growing in the field of promoting Vietnamese culture in the Austin community. They also deal with advocacy and social services, but they're basically really catering to their community. But of course, their events are open to everybody, the general Austin public. I like the application having you know, taken us to the history of you know, from when they were founded in 1997. I like their cultural collaborations. They do work with other Asian organizations. I really like the fact that they show their entire board on their website, so you can you know, you can actually see the board members rather than just reading names. They're all invested, and they're from the community, and so the board is representative of the community and the constituents that they serve. Let's see what else. I have one note saying would have been good to see the staff of the organization. They're not included in the application or on the website, and maybe they don't have paid staff yet. Maybe their board members are taking care of all their activities, but yeah, just a note. In terms of accessibility, I kind of took off a few points there. I felt there wasn't, you know, they just say NA. So yeah, they haven't really thought through that or worked on that accessibility piece. And they didn't have a clear marketing plan. And their budget is missing, or their budget form is missing. All for me, although they have an explanation in the budget thing, they talk about how they're going to spend them or use the funding, which they get from Elevate, but there is no budget form. And maybe Jesus, you can see it at your end, and that's all I have.
Thank you, Alka. Before we move on to the secondary, I do not see any attachments for VCAT when I look there. And then for the staff question, they do mention something about staff in their response, and now I lost it. But somewhere in there, they do mention staff, but maybe your comment, Alka, was just providing some more detail. I will remind the panelists, and just so the applicants are aware, there is some board and possibly staff info, like demographic information that is collected, but that is not visible to the panelists. So the applicant may have thought that they were providing info with that, thinking that the panelists would be able to see that. With that being said, we'll move on to this.
Sorry,
Oh, yeah.
Jesus. Yeah, no, you're right. They do mention the staff in the cultural leadership answer, where they say staff are responsible for the day-to-day operations of our organization, but they don't really anywhere list who the staff is or how many positions do they have, or nothing about them in the application or even on their website, which I looked at. So that was the only thing.
Okay, thank you for that clarification, Alka. And secondary, Sue?
There we go. I agree with Alka. She had a great, very comprehensive approach to reviewing this group. I did want to just point out that there's such a vibrant group. They're doing so much work, and it's very exciting to see all the different ways that they're reaching out to their community. They did talk a little bit about marginalization in their application, saying that the Vietnamese American community is not as marginalized as it once was, but there are still challenges, and they name them: language barriers, discrimination, lack of access to resources, being underrepresented and underfunded, which I thought was excellent to hear from their point of view what the issues are for them. I also appreciated the conversation under the community voice. They definitely had a great process to capture the community voice, including community engagement workshops, and the plan to create a new advisory board and community team to provide feedback on their projects was, I thought, exemplary. I was very excited to read a little bit more about the two major festivals that they're asking for funding for, with the depth of culture that they're going to be representing, because there was a lot of conversation around things like Texas voting advocacy and a winter drive and other things that may not quite align as much as an arts organization, but the festival was the two festivals talk about dragon and lion dance performances and Vietnamese singers and dancers and various cultural showcases, including Vietnamese cuisine and engaging in Asian activities. I just thought it was really exciting to read all about all the things that they're doing. And I also noted, I was sad that they just put NA under accessibility, and that the funding, the programmatic description could have been a little bit clearer to me as to how they were going to be marketing to new and existing audiences. And yeah, I was sorry that there was no documentation uploaded in the backend too. And that's it.
Thank you, Alka and Sue. Did other panelists have comments or things you'd like to add? We have 2 minutes on this applicant. Thanks, Jesus. I do just want to say for the record that just a reminder that the funding priority as listed in the guidelines is those who've been at immediate risk of cultural erasure and displacement within Austin and/or have been institutionally marginalized and underfunded by the City of Austin Cultural Arts Division. So Sue, spoke about the marginalization and how that was addressed in the application. And we've been talking a lot about cultural erasure, and I wanted to make sure that everybody listening and everybody on the panel had the context of kind of the two pieces of those funding priorities in this funding.
Thank you, Jen. A little over a minute left. Any final thoughts from the panel? If there are none, if you would please finalize your scores and let me know when you have done so. Alka, Chloe, Zell, Onyx, and Sue. All right. Next application up for review is Eastside Kings Foundation. Onyx and Alka are our primary and secondary. And Onyx, whenever you're ready to begin.
Yeah, okay, so let's see. So the Eastside Kings Foundation is putting on the Eastside Kings Festival, which has been instrumental in slowing down Black flight in East Austin by providing professional music performance opportunities. Eastside Kings Foundation mission is to preserve and promote the cultural heritage of African American blues, jazz, and gospel. They prioritize largely unknown Black musicians and the marginalized Black community in East Austin. And the foundation not only empowers these artists, but also addresses cultural erasure and displacement. So this is one thing that stood out to me from the response or in their application. So I wanted to highlight that. They are led by musician Orange Jefferson, the Artist Advisory Board, and in collaboration with Edie Stout and Dial Tone Records. Hope I'm saying that right. Based on their response, the board of directors is also vested in a diverse assembly of individuals closely connected to the community, representing their key constituencies. When it comes to community voice, I also noted that more than 50 Black artists from Austin have taken part in the recording projects of Dial Tone Records. More than 30 of these artists have launched music careers, taking them on tours throughout Europe, Japan, and beyond. So they seem to be really involved in the community and helping musicians launch their careers, providing also platforms for more unknown musicians. And I also highlighted that in the application. The festival's programming centers multi-generational Black artists, which I also appreciated. The main activity of focus is the festival, which is a multi-day, multi-sided music festival. And it is noteworthy that they bring up different layers of the festival. For example, community collaboration and engagement through activities that include a pre-festival symposium with artists, workshops, and keynotes by blues scholars, as well as a kickoff and after party with their festival partners. So I really appreciated that they're not just thinking of, okay, we're putting on a festival and that's it. It's like they're thinking about the before, the during, and the after, what the impact is and what effect it has on the community. Intersectionality is woven within the festival's activities through the focus of preserving East Austin's Black blues legacy while addressing the multifaceted challenges faced by artists. Female artists are highlighted, artist-led leadership roles ensure representation, affordable pricing, and free entrances. This counters financial barriers, and inclusive programming also caters to a diverse multi-generational audience. As I mentioned, the festival creates learning opportunities, job creations, for example, for roles in tech crew, stage crew, etc. And they create a established network of both emerging and established musicians. They're aiming right now to expand from 5 festival venues to 12. and this is part of their programmatic reach. They also included plans to collaborate with international publications and media outlets. Their budget provided enough detail and information to understand their fiscal health, and those were my main components of my review. Overall, I thought it was a great application, and I really felt that their answers, I think they did a good job.
Thank you, Onyx. Secondary, Alka?
I think Onyx did a great job of reviewing that one, and I agree with 100% of what she said. I did. I don't want to repeat everything, but yeah, I agreed with everything. The two small things to add on would be I thought that they made a note saying that, you know, they'll have 9 to 12 different clubs and outdoor venues for the festival, which are within walking distance of each other on the, you know, east, the 1800 block of East 12th. So I like that they're really in that area. They're serving people. They're making it accessible. They're making it. You know, they're not picking it up and taking it to another part of town, which is you know, alien to people who they're trying to serve. So I really like that. I really enjoyed getting to know this group. You know, I think what they're doing is amazing in Austin. I did feel like at some point that they got tired of writing the application, because one of their answers is just like a one line. It still explains everything. It's good, but you know, for where, you know, how does your community support you financially? And another way is their answer is just our audience comes from around the world and contributes substantially to the success of the event, without giving any details. But I did also score this application really high. I did take off some points for the accessibility, where the only thing they say is all our events are ADA compatible, and doesn't really expand on that. So it just meets the basic. But overall, I would agree it's a really strong proposal. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you both. Does anyone else have other comments that they want to share for this application?
Seeing as there are no further comments, if you would please finalize your scores and let me know when you have done so. Alka, Chloe, or excuse me, Onyx, Chloe, Zell, and Sue. Alka, did I see your thumb up? Okay, yes. All right. Next application up for review is Scriptworks. Zell has a conflict of interest with this application, so he will turn his camera off and will not score this application. So there will be no score for him from him when we are averaging the other panelist scores together to determine the final score for this applicant. We will call Zell back once everybody has finished completing their application scores, or finalizing their application scores on this one. So Scriptworks, primary is Onyx, secondary is Chloe. Onyx, whenever you're ready to begin.
Onyx, you're muted.
I'm almost, 1 second, I'm just putting all my notes in order. Okay. So we have Scriptworks. Scriptworks supports dramatic writers by providing opportunities at all stages in the writing process. They identify their key constituencies as BIPOC communities. And one of the ways they serve this key constituency is through the Playwrights of Color initiative, where they connect with BIPOC members in a network of local writers who can identify the challenges of creating and producing theatrical work. They also have initiatives like Teatro Vivo and various workshops that engage the LGBTQ and BIPOC communities. So I wanted to highlight that as far as their mission. Other things that I wanted to note are that ScriptWorks leadership include a diverse and representative board of directors with a unique, one second, let me see. The executive artistic director has a unique perspective, and the inclusive selection panels actively embody and reflect the diverse demographic and artistic styles of the community they serve. They also broke down their leadership. They broke down their programs, and they mentioned that their programs represent their community in that 5 of the 8. Sorry, one second. I'm just getting a little lost here. Oh, okay. So they broke down their board of directors, and they were talking about how they represent the community in that 5 of the 8 are active members of the organization and are all creative artists. They believe that because of this, they understand the challenges that are facing playwrights, and they also represent the community demographically in that their leadership body ranges from the 30s to the 70s, and a majority of the members represent also members of the LGBTQ community and disability communities. When it comes to community voice, I noted that they involve the community in the creative direction of their projects through the inclusion of diverse contributors from local and national arts community organizations. And they also provide ideas for plays, ensuring a multiplicity of perspectives, and they empower the community members through the selection panel process for play production. This creates a more collaborative environment that celebrates and amplifies a variety of voices. When it came to their community relationships, they mentioned, and this is something that I appreciated, they embrace the volunteerism. They acknowledged that the actors' time, that there was a period of time when the actors, have donated their time to readings, to brainstorm different productions, and they acknowledged the big role that volunteers have played in this regard. And they also mentioned that they have found it challenging to develop a consistent donor relationship. However, their largest donor group is their members and the theater community. So I thought it was interesting that, and I appreciated that they were honest, that they mentioned that they have struggled to maintain a consistent donor base. One way in which ScriptWorks demonstrates a commitment to accessibility is by offering printed scripts for deaf and hard of hearing community, aiming to provide ASL interpreted and audio described performances. And those are 2 things that I noted. They also mentioned, and this is one thing where I took some points off, they don't specifically propose any specialized language access accommodations at the moment. And those are my main notes. Thank you.
Thank you. Secondary, Chloe?
I have nothing to add. I agree with everything that Onyx said.
Thank you, Onyx and Chloe. Is there anything else that other applicants would, other panelists would like to add on this application?
Seeing as there are no additional comments, if you would please, panelists, finalize your scores and let me know when you have done so we can invite Zell back. So Chloe is done. Alka, Onyx, and Sue. All right, Zell, you may come back on camera. We have finished the review of ScriptWorks. Next application up for review is Acapella Texas Chorus. Alka and Onyx are our primary and secondary. And Alka, whenever you're ready to begin.
So this is the Acapella Texas Chorus. They are requesting funding for their Spring Sing Fest 2024, which would be a vocal music festival for singing groups in Central Texas. It will provide a unique opportunity for them to perform in a festival setting with professional sound, hospitality, and advertising not typically available to local singing groups. So they're giving a platform to local singing groups who are not necessarily known or have the means to really reach a bigger audience. And they're making a festival out of it with food trucks and in a strategic high traffic location. The project or the mission of the organization don't specifically speak to any particular community. So I feel like this is another one of the applicants who the application doesn't serve either a historically marginalized group or a cultural group at the risk of erasure. So I have therefore rated the application accordingly. Though I do think that they're a really fun, interesting group doing really great work. I'm glad they included their website link. I was able to see their work samples. It's it's a great arts group. Maybe not necessarily so much in the cultural space, but definitely doing very interesting work. Has a history of service of over 60 years. So this is probably one of the older groups that I have reviewed, for Elevate. And they seem to be evolving. In 2022, they had a member initiative and a motion to welcome singers of all genders, ages, and backgrounds. I'm assuming it was an all-white male group, which has kind of evolved to include women and younger people and people of different backgrounds. But I feel like they have a long way to go to be maybe more inclusive and diverse, though they're moving in the right direction for sure. And their Spring Fest might really explode with cultural vibrancy, with the chorus groups. So the proposal also didn't necessarily describe how the leadership had lived experiences within the key constituency that they serve, in terms of if it is a cultural, if they are serving the marginalized, groups which they don't really say anywhere in the application. So I feel like maybe the first step is also to include more people on the board and in the leadership positions of, where you want to take the programming. What else? It talks about the chorus members participating and contributing to the community. So it's almost, I got the impression that you have to kind of, there's a membership that you pay to be a part of the chorus, and that's probably what their operating funds are mostly. But it wasn't really clear how their community invests in them in other ways. So this is in the community relationships piece. there would have a marketing plan was missing. And that's all I have for now. I will pass it on to Sue.
To Onyx as
Onyx.
secondary. Yes, thank you.
Hi, okay. How many minutes do we have left? I just want to make sure. 5? Okay, I'll try to be fast. I agree with many things that, all things that were said. You know, older organization, they their most inclusive programmatic sample was launched in 2022. So for a 60-year organization, I just felt like, yeah, they have, I think, a long way to go. I want to mention that based on the response, I did not see any mention of expansion when it comes to access or outreach to non-binary and gender non-conforming groups, people or specific people of color, etc. The leadership team response, apologies, focused more on the what than the how. So that's another thing that I took into consideration for scoring. And then what I mean by that is, you know, what the leadership has done or the qualifications versus how that is a reflection of the community. They also mentioned in the intersectionality section that they have this policy where potential frictions are quite deliberately left at the door. And so I was just very confused and just not sure what that, like, how is that in policy format, or how is that enacted? And that's something that I felt could have been expanded a lot more on, in terms of intersectionality. For instance, what frictions have they identified, and so on. There's a recent embrace of intersectionality sparked when a married couple moved to Austin in 2022. They were looking to join a mixed barbershop chorus after having experienced mixed chorus singing with the Houston barbershop chorus. And that's why they decided to open up their programming to other, you know, genders. And I just felt that that was interesting. And I also graded or rated the response accordingly, because I felt that that was very interesting, that was what launched the opening of more people into the chorus, and so recent too, as opposed to, you know, why not earlier. And that was pretty much it. And I felt overall this organization, you know, even though it has a long history, it felt like it has a long way to go. Thanks.
Thanks, Olga and Onyx, and thanks, Jesus. We have 2 minutes. Anything folks wanted to add? Any comments on this application that have not been raised?
Seeing as how there are no additional comments from the panel, if you would please finalize your scores and let me know when you have done so. Chloe? Zell? Sue? Onyx? Okay, thank you. And our final application up for review today is La Folia Austin Baroque. Chloe and Sue are our primary and secondary. And Chloe, whenever you are ready to begin.
So La Folia's mission is to preserve and advance the art of Baroque and earlier classical music through performance, recording, and other media. I personally don't think La Folia Austin Baroque is for this grant cycle. Their mission and history categories felt too broad. not all artists and young musicians have the same experiences, so broadly serving all of them isn't going to do anything specific for marginalized communities. In their cultural leadership categories, they mentioned that they are all white, and I appreciate the honesty, but they do throw in at the end that some of their board members are LGBT. However, every letter in the LGBT community has a completely different experience, so it would have been nice to see how these voices are being heard within the board and what experiences they're bringing to the table. They mentioned that surveys in their community voice section, but surveys are a little bit too late in the creative process. Consider inviting some of these voices to the board so they can find better ways to serve them so that they're involved in the creative process from the start. For their intersectionality category, they just straight up say intersectionality is not a key component of their activities. Classical music has historically been dominated by men and has a history of systemic racism, so it's really important to bring intersectionality and consider it to engage around issues of privilege. You must consider community voices outside of surveys, take action to invite and center the work of all marginalized individuals, and think about everyone's different experiences. Not all oppression is created equal. You need to find a way to share stories about the people around you so they're not just seen as numbers. For their community, cultural activities, and opportunity categories, they need to rethink how they're serving their youth. Armstrong Community Music School is located in Westlake Hills, which is one of Austin's richest neighborhoods. And it's cool that the young musicians were non-white, but the way that they put it in their proposal felt a little odd to me. They need to think about how they can take their youth outreach and develop content by and for groups that are at risk of being culturally erased. This also means collaborating with musicians that come from these marginalized backgrounds to plan these programs. I would say that in your community relationships category, they mention that they partner with an organization that can use their space to present audiences in East Austin. So Redeemer Presbyterian is in East Austin, but what I guess I was wondering is why they aren't doing more outreach in East Austin instead of across town in Westlake when there are like 2 Title I schools within 10 minutes of that church. I would say finally for their programmatic reach section, what I kind of noticed is that how do they know that youth-oriented people may not like their activities, because I mentioned that, if they're not really properly reaching out to them? They should really be going to schools, try to make ways their experiences be more interactive. At the end, they do talk about wanting to market specifically to the elderly, but their vision states that they want to perform for youth and new audiences. So that kind of felt a little inconsistent and odd, because they mentioned senior citizens vocalizing that they would rather stay at home and watch the videos online. If they don't want to go, don't make them go. Just challenge yourself to reach new audiences instead of focusing on what you already have and what's easier. But that's what I had.
Thank you, Chloe. Secondary, Sue?
So I appreciated that La Folia, and I'm probably saying it wrong, Austin Baroque's trying to advance an art that is sort of unique, the Baroque and early classical music. I also found it difficult to understand how this proposal fits within the priorities of the Elevate program. Ideally, we could fund every application that we've reviewed in this process, but it's just not possible. And I did feel like this may not fit super well here. Most of the comments that Chloe made were spot on. I agree with them. I wanted to address the notion of accessibility. They suggested that perhaps providing transportation for the elderly to the concerts might be a form of accessibility or a way to help support their audience. And I would suggest that there probably are other ways that their audience could benefit from some accommodations beyond providing transportation. And I also noted there was no special language access, which seems like a missed opportunity also, because that age group also has that issue. But I agree with Chloe that it would be wonderful to see an expansion of your audience, and I wish that had been discussed more under the programmatic reach notes. And that's it for me.
Thank you, Chloe and Sue. Do other panelists have additional comments on this application?
I just wanted to add that I missed seeing of Form 990 that was not attached. You know, for me, that always kind of gives a little history of where the organization is, how it's operated, what they've been spending on. I also didn't see a board of directors list attached, and I did not find it on their website either. And I think that as a nonprofit, that's not very responsible. I think your board of directors should be, you know, out the front, you know, front and center. But that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Akka. Anyone else?
We still have about 4 minutes left. I'm going to look real quick to see what kind of documentation there may be. So other panelists can have any additional comments that they'd like, but I'm going to be looking, just double checking what we have here as attachments.
Sue, I see that you're unmuted. Did you want to offer something else, or did your computer just betray you?
Okay, yes, and so what I was doing is just double checking that maybe something wasn't inadvertently misworded. So I did a quick preview and downloaded their work sample as well. But no, I did not see either a 990 or a board list for this applicant. With that being said, any final comments? I'm guessing not while I was searching for that info, but any additional comments from the panel? If not, if you would please finalize your scores and let me know when you have done so. Zell, Chloe, Onyx, and Alka and Sue. Okay. And that is the Elevate Panel Organization 2 Day 1. And we will stop the recording now.